Welcome to Critical Thinking, a Guide to Skillful Reasoning. I'm Michelle Warren, Program Chair of the Masters in Teaching and Learning with Technology in the College of Education. I'd like to start with a question. If a student asked you, "Can you tell me what you mean by critical thinking?" what would you tell them? Well, we know that critical thinking is an active yet reflective process for examining an issue or problem. It requires the suspension of judgment in order to examine and gather multiple perspectives, look at evidence, and evaluate arguments. The Discussion Board Task Force on Student Success determined that we needed to develop a process for critical thinking that was accessible and easy to follow, even for new undergraduate students. Our task force represented a wide range of perspectives, including student-facing staff such as academic advisors and student development and engagement people, faculty across colleges, someone from institutional effectiveness, people from faculty support and development, and people from the Writing Center. We researched definitions and models of critical thinking. In particular, we referenced criticalthinking.org quite a bit. We liked the way that they parsed out the different elements of critical thinking, and they defined each segment in a nice, clear way. We also looked carefully at the LEAP Critical Thinking Value rubric, which was developed by the Association of American Colleges and Universities. We liked the way that it created criteria in a sequential manner, starting at the beginning with critical thinking issues by explaining the issues, moving on to evidence, and finally to student position and conclusions and related outcomes. Yet we felt there was no model that really provided students with a simple way to step through a critical thinking process in a clear sequential manner. Something we could plop down in front of students, almost like a tutorial, that would help them see the separate activities around building a case and developing an argument that was coherent, cohesive, and logical. So we developed a simple and engaging model, and we created two documents, an infographic and an accompanying guide. So at this point, I'd like to take you to the critical thinking website that we developed that houses our model and materials. And on the home page, it provides an overview of critical thinking, kind of introduces the topic and the ideas around it. And we've got that definition that we were looking for in the beginning of this presentation. It was a definition that was developed by the American Association of Colleges and Universities, and it suggests that critical thinking is a habit of mind characterized by a thorough exploration of issues, ideas, artifacts, and events before forming an opinion or conclusion. And I think there's a couple key concepts in this definition. The first, that critical thinking is a habit of mind. It's not something that we do naturally. It's something we have to build those skills. We have to understand why those skills are important, and we have to build them within ourselves. This is where the faculty comes in helping students build the habits of critical thinking. The other thing is the suspension of judgment. Again here, exploration of artifacts, ideas, issues, and events before forming an opinion or conclusion. So again, this withholding judgment, looking at an issue deeply, and then once we've examined it carefully, then we can come to our own opinions and conclusions. Moving on. I want to take you to the infographic itself. So here we are with the infographic. This is the key tool that we are offering students in the classroom. And again, it's simple and engaging, we believe. And it has that definition here at the top. And then it takes them step by step through the process of critical thinking. The first thing you want to do is describe the issue. Without judgment or bias, we want to clarify the issue. What are the main ideas, events, definitions, and concepts? What factors influence the issue? Then we go into defining positions. What do people think about it? What are the common assumptions and beliefs? What do professionals and experts suggest about this issue? And then we have evaluating evidence. We evaluate the evidence. We look at the expert opinions. How do we know that their opinions are truly expert opinions? Why are people coming to these conclusions and understandings and perspectives of the issue? So we're really evaluating the evidence. We're kind of manipulating it, thinking about it, rolling it around in our minds, examining the arguments. Now we're coming to step 4, the comparing of the arguments, positions, ideas. So we're balancing and weighing the concepts and arguments about the issue and looking at the positions, what stands up to scrutiny. Finally, now we're ready for step 5, the student position. What's your position? What are the arguments that challenge your position? How do you respond to those arguments? And then what are the implications to your decisions and your position? What kind of impact will that have? And then finally, because nothing ever stops at the end, what are the further questions? What are the impacts that we need to think about in considering this issue moving forward? So that's the model right there. Now we've also provided a guide. This is a little bit more text-heavy guide, and it's for people who prefer the language-based version of learning models, and also for people who use screen readers. And finally, there's critical thinking materials that people can download. So you can download the infographic and the guides, and you can just have them locally on your own computer. Now, to support faculty in using these in the classroom, we came up with a system. And this system is what we used in our pilot study, which I will introduce in just a moment. But the system included a series of announcements, and we created one announcement for each week. So in week 1, we have what is critical thinking, introducing it, and then we have step 1 describing the issue. This was posted in week 1 announcement, but also these were posted in the first posting of each week in the discussion boards. So not only did students receive this information in their announcements, but they also received it in week 1 of each discussion board. So in week 1, they would see this intro to critical thinking and step 1. In week 2, the announcement would be posted with critical thinking step 2, defining positions. They're going to define the expert and the common assumptions. And this exact same information is also in the discussion board of week 2. Same with week 3 and so forth. Now, in order for faculty to be able to embed the concepts of this model of critical thinking, we created badges along with feedback. In week 1, students examined the description of the issue. They used that step 1 in the model. And so we created a badge that supported the step 1, describing the issue. And we also created some feedback around that so that faculty, when students did a good job of describing an issue, was pulling together the facts and events of the issue, then faculty could copy that badge and the critical thinking information, paste it into the classroom discussion board, and then from there they could modify the feedback as they felt was appropriate. In week 2, we focused on the step 2, which was comparing different positions, examining positions. And so depending on whether they were looking at common assumptions or expert position, faculty could copy badges and again paste those into the classroom. And then finally, we also had a critical thinking. In general, a great critical thinking. You demonstrated skillful reasoning by incorporating several of the steps to critical thinking in your work. So these badges were used in the classroom. And what I'd like to do is show you very briefly a classroom with those badges in them. Here we are in HIS 206. And you can see the critical thinking announcements spread over each of the weeks. Here we are, step 1, step 2, step 3. Here's what step 2 looks like if we take a look at it. Exactly cut and paste from the website. So we're going to go to week 1 now, and we'll go to the discussion 1 of week 1. And you can see that the critical thinking, the exact message that was posted in the announcements, is also in week 1 of the first discussion board of the week. And then the instructor uses the badges, and in some cases it can be as simple as copying and pasting the feedback from the website right into the response, and you're good with it. That's all you need to do. Other faculty like to add a couple additional phrases or sentences to embed the badge a little bit more or personalize it a little bit more. But we found that students really did like these, and they took note of the badges, and they also took note of other people being awarded the badges. So there it is in the classroom, very simple. And now we'll go back to the pilot study that I'd like to share with you. The pilot consisted of 32 sections, 28 undergraduate for graduate, 17 treatment, which meant that we tested the tools and the critical thinking model in the classroom, and 15 control groups. The control courses were courses that were taught previous to the treatment or to the courses that used the critical thinking. So the courses were identical in instructor and course, but they were we used courses that were taught prior to introduction of the critical thinking treatment or critical thinking model. Over 650 students were participants in the study, and we are cautiously optimistic about some of the findings that we're seeing as a result of the use of the critical thinking tools. We're seeing a 2% increase in final grade average. We're seeing a slight increase in course grade from a C+ to a B-. We're seeing a 5% reduction in course fail rate. And for the at-risk students, which are students that received a C- or below, we're finding that they are more successful, 8.3 increase in grades to C- or above. After using the critical thinking materials in the classroom, we also asked students and faculty to complete a survey. Each had their own separate survey. And I don't want to go into the data from the survey because we're still analyzing that, but I would like to share a couple of last comments from the participants. So from the faculty, we had, "I wish I had this in every class. I'd like to see examples of how and when other instructors are utilizing these tools. I've taught several courses at Ashford and noticed an improvement in discussion boards when using the badges. Students seem to be putting more effort into the boards. I really like the look and feel of the materials. I think they're easy to use. I'm finding them easier to use when I focus on one area each week. These would be easier if we had a button to administer rather than copy and paste." So you can see there's a little bit around figuring out how to use the materials efficiently. We are considering embedding them in the classroom so that they can be used easier, but I'm not sure how far along the road we can get with just making it a click and select the badge and it suddenly appears. That would be ideal, but at this point we don't have that capability. I'd also like to share some student comments. The critical thinking materials helped, especially when I needed a visual to put everything together. I found them very helpful. I've even printed them for future reference. The critical thinking materials has me using critical thinking in every aspect of my life. It has opened my eyes and mind to a new way of thinking. Wow. And of course, we always have one of these. Honestly, I never opened the tab or read any of the materials, but I can produce A quality work without it. So we've got to keep it real and keep us honest. There's always two sides to every story. But we wanted to share those comments with you. We think that people seem to be enjoying them. There seems to be positive results with them. There seems to be positive data that supports the outcomes to successful critical thinking in the classroom. And we hope that you are interested in considering the use of these materials. So at this point, we'd like to ask you, what are your thoughts about the model, the Skillful Reasoning Critical Thinking model? Would you like to use this model in your classroom to guide critical thinking? And how might you use the materials and badges? How could they be operationalized to make it easy for you to use them yourself? So once again, special thanks to the members of the Discussion Board Task Force on Student Success. And thank you for joining me in Critical Thinking, a Guide to Skillful Reasoning.